What's up, everybody? Let's pile into this live stream. All right. New timeout links. Okay. Okay. I can put y'all in timeout, YouTube says. What's up, everybody? Thanks for clicking this video. Thanks for tuning into my channel. My name is Simon Hill, the realest, rawest, blackest YouTuber out here right now. And we are doing our daily live stream for today, September 28th, 2023. And we're talking about the riots that are popping off in Philadelphia right now. And this is a story that I think has a lot of elements to it. Of course, nobody likes to see when, businesses are destroyed or when people get arrested or when people are hurt or killed due to political things that are happening or societal issues and that sort of thing. But we got to keep it real. There's a systemic reason why people are rioting, and we need to always keep that in mind. So let's get into it. We always start these live streams up with the map. And also, the chat is open on my phone. If you want to send comments, if you want to leave your input on the conversation around this topic, jump on in because this is open for everybody. So let's get to it. So Philadelphia is one of the largest cities in America. It's located here on the East Coast in the state of Pennsylvania. I know it might seem silly for me to be doing this for some of my American viewers, but trust and believe there are a lot of people out there in the world who don't know geography. So that's why we always start one of these lessons off with a map. So before we talk about the riots, let's talk about how this whole situation started. The people of Philadelphia, the young people of Philadelphia are not rising up just because they're going crazy, just because they have nothing to do. It's because of this story here. So let's get to it. This is Eddie Irizarry case. Protesters rally around the city hall demanding justice. This was published on September 26th. 2023 on CBSNews.com. So, protesters took over the streets outside of Philadelphia City Hall Tuesday evening, demanding justice for Eddie Irizarry. The feeling is just devastated, heartbroken for the family. Chiomara Torres, who represents the Party for Socialism and Liberation, says this just hours after a judge dropped all charges against former Philadelphia police officer Mark Dial. Irizarry's family is livid. Everyone in Philadelphia has seen a murder. They see my nephew get effing murdered, ambushed in his effing car, and they threw out all his effing charges, Irizarry's aunt, Zoradia Garcia, said. Dial's defense attorney is elated. In the courtroom today, there was justice. Brian McNongle said, this should have never been charged as a crime, and we're elated that Mark's coming home to his family. We sat down for a one-on-one interview with interim police commissioner John Stanford. He says the decision on Dial returning to the force is out of his hands, but there's an outgoing internal investigation aside from Tuesday's court decision. Question: how is this police department working to rebuild and maintain trust with the community in light of incidents like this? John Stanford, the interim Philadelphia police commissioner. There's always those situations where you have an incident that can damage relationships or put a strain on them. But the reality is you have to do the work every day so that the communities understand what you're doing and what you're about as an organization. The cops walk around killing our people with impunity. So I don't think the trust exists, and it's been greatly eroded by this situation, Torres says. Stanford believes good policing requires balance. Quite frankly, the responsibility is on us to make sure that we are treating people with the level of dignity and respect that they deserve as human beings, he said. You can make sure that you have training and policies that fall in line with best practices while also ensuring that you're taking a firm approach to fighting crime, because at the end of the day, everybody in every community across the city, they want to feel safe. The DA's office filed a motion to reinstate charges against former officer Mark Dial. So this story about Eddie Irizarry, basically the kid was running from police, and yeah, he tried to run away from the police and he got shot and killed. And now the young people in Philadelphia are turning up. So let's go to the story here. Multiple stores looted in Philadelphia overnight as police cracked down. So, a day after looting in Philadelphia resulted in over 50 arrests and damage at stores in multiple neighborhoods, a few more stores were damaged in looting incidents Wednesday night and Thursday morning. At least three stores were looted overnight, including a fine wine and good spirits liquor store in Lawndale and a beauty supply store in Tacony. At Nat's Beauty Supply in Tacony, surveillance video showed women breaking through the glass front door and taking items including hair extensions, weaves, and wigs. Owner Claudia Selmias opened the store just 6 months ago and is devastated. She had just restocked the shelves before thousands of dollars worth of merchandise was taken overnight. It's just me doing everything. I don't know what to think. I don't know who to call, Silmaya said. It's just a lot right now. Silmaya's plans to keep the store open Thursday. Everything is still missing. I don't see where or how I'm going to get any help, Silmias said. I still got to have to be open because I need the money. I need the money to fix whatever is broken. Silmias started in the beauty industry before she moved from Haiti to the U.S. Sad, heartbroken. I feel like I was just doing all this hard work in vain. That's just how I feel right now, Silmia said. And that's a shame, you know. I know in yesterday's live stream, we talked about immigrants and, you know, we might have gotten a little hot talking about the immigrants, but let's keep it real. Somebody that moves from Haiti to the U.S., they went through a lot of struggle to get into the country. And it's very unfortunate that this person, you know, had their business ransacked like that. You know, I think it was during the LA riots, the people would put up the posters in front of their business saying that this is a black owned business. So if it did ever pop off, you know, in LA, when people started protesting because the police beat up Rodney King or something, the businesses would be protected because it said black owned. But, you know, we need to go back to that where we look out for each other. Sorry about that, guys. Allergies. All right, but let's keep building. So, looting follows judge dismissing charges in death of Eddie Irizarry in Philadelphia. The looting Tuesday and Wednesday nights followed a Philadelphia judge's dismissal of all charges, including a murder count against former Philadelphia police officer Mark Dial. Dial was charged after surveillance and body camera videos showed him shooting Eddie Irizarry in Kensington. The district attorney's office has refiled the charges. Now, I don't know everything about the Eddie Irizarry case, but I can generally assume that in this case they thought he had a gun or they thought he was a danger to them, and so then they let off shots, right? And I'll say this once again, like for anybody who has not kept up with my content or how I think about police violence in the US, right? In other countries, there are criminals. In other countries, there are people who commit crime, sometimes even violent crime. But a lot of the times in other countries, the police don't kill the citizens. Why don't they kill the citizens in Germany, in Switzerland, in Italy, in Spain, in the UK at the same rate that they do in the US? It's not only just because we are a larger country, it's because in the US, it is very likely that citizens have guns, that they have access to weapons. So the police are in reasonable fear for their lives that the people that they are arresting or attempting to restrain might have a weapon. The people that they're chasing down might shoot back at them. This is not the same as where I am now in Hungary, or if I were to go across the border into the Czech Republic or in Slovakia or in many places in the world, even third world nations like Turkey, Kenya, Tanzania, Serbia, Kosovo, Albania, that sort of thing. Other places that I've gone don't have the same interactions with police or the outcomes that happen with police because in those countries, those citizens do not have weapons. So we as Americans have to consider, who do we value more, other citizens' lives or our ability to own guns? Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, the criminals will be able to get guns anyway, and the criminals will be able to harass citizens with weapons. You can think that, or we can think of a policy or a way to actually mitigate the number of guns on the street to reduce the police being in fear of their lives, other citizens being in fear of their lives, and the criminals having access to weapons. All three can be done. But unfortunately, for Americans, the gun is God. And before we ever stop police getting shot or our kids getting shot in school or, you know, kids accidentally finding dad's gun and shooting themselves, that sort of thing, before we ever stop that, we will never give up the gun. We will never give up the gun in America. That's the mentality of Americans. That's backwards. So I once again, I don't know what happened exactly in the Irizarry case, but what I'm saying is that that did not need to happen had we lived if we lived in a society that had less weapons on the street. Let's keep building here. So, liquor store looted after closures as precaution against looting. Liquor stores have been a common target of looters, with at least 18 in Philadelphia hit in the first night of looting. All liquor stores in Pennsylvania are run by the Liquor Control Board, which elected to close all locations in Philadelphia and one in Montgomery County Wednesday. One of those shuttered liquor stores was hit by looters on Wednesday night. Windows were broken at the Fine Wine and Good Spirit store on Adams Avenue, and merchandise was missing from several shelves. Let's keep building. Philadelphia police said nearly 80 incidents of looting happened across the city overnight. Tuesday, and a streetwear business were among the shots hit. Center City was quieter Wednesday night as police were out in force and businesses cleaned up shards of broken glass. Police believed groups are using social media to organize the gatherings and even live streaming the looting. Now, that's just ridiculous. The young people that are live streaming them, going out there, committing these sorts of crimes, that's really dumb. Y'all are really. Please don't live stream your crimes. We're going to look at the video soon. So we're going to come back to that. Let's just finish up this article. So from Wednesday night, 52 people were arrested after the looting incidents. They say of that number, 31 have formally been charged by the district attorney's office. They range in ages from 14 to 37 years old. You're a 37-year-old man out there looting. Come on now. Come on now. Don't you got a job? Don't you got kids, man? Go home. I'm playing, man. So most of the charges are for burglary and theft. 6 people have been charged with inciting a riot. An influencer known as Meatball, 21-year-old Deja Blackwell, was charged for her alleged role in multiple incidents of property destruction, burglary, and theft from businesses in 7 different locations throughout the city. According to police, she is alleged to have used her social media following to encourage people to participate in criminal activities in those locations. Police said she has been charged with burglary, conspiracy, criminal trespass, riots, criminal mischief, criminal use of communication facility, receipts of stolen property, and disorderly conduct. Police are still investigating other incidents. Once again, rioting is not cool. Burning down businesses is not cool. We don't support that at all. Criminality is not good. And when we look at the videos of what they were doing in Philly, this is not cool, man. We do not condone this at all. Running up into the Apple store, especially, as a group of kids, man, you have your whole life ahead of you. Don't do this. You might ruin your future. You could go to college. You can get a good job. You could, do a lot of things in life. But a lot of these kids are possibly running into these stores, stealing the iPads, stealing the MacBooks, and all that sort of thing because they feel like there is no future. We live in a country, unfortunately, where a lot of people are economically deprived, and kids are selling these iPhones out on the market or the MacBooks and that sort of thing to try to make money for themselves. Unfortunately, even though we live in the richest nation in the world, in Philadelphia, not a broke city at all. It is a city that has problems, but it is not a city where a lot of people feel like they have opportunity and that sort of thing. I've never been to Philly, and that's not right, man. The police should not be punching people to arrest them, man. That's a kid. A grown man just punched a kid in the face. But all these kids are really doing something really dumb. But I understand where it comes from. It comes from frustration. It comes from lack of opportunity. It comes from them not seeing a future for themselves, living in a city that's racially segregated, living in a country that routinely puts down black people and oppresses us and deprives us of economic opportunity. I know where all of this frustration and anger comes from, but also a lot of it is stupidity. This is just plain stupid. Come on now. There are ways to fight back against the system that don't include this, but the system has to understand that people will do this if justice is not produced. We always say at the protest, no justice, no peace. And if there is no justice, there will be no peace because the people will act out. We have to think about it. Everybody saw the camera footage of Eddie Irizarry getting killed, and that's not cool. That's not cool what happened to that boy. But it's also not cool to run into the businesses. And everybody, and I feel like Trump saying this, everybody on both sides is somewhat responsible for everything that we're seeing here. But we need to remember that this is not the first time in a major American city riots have happened. The first riots in the U.S. were not done by black people tearing down businesses and tearing into stores and looting and that sort of thing. The first riots in America were race riots. What are race riots? Race riots is a misnomer. It's a wrong term to use. I don't like the term because it should be called white supremacist violent terrorism, which is what it was. And there have been more race riots or white supremacist violent terrorist attacks on black people in America than there have been riots of black people breaking into stores and looting and that sort of thing. So let's go back in history to the race riots in Philadelphia during the 1919 Red Summer. There were a number of race riots in Philadelphia during the 1919 Red Summer. As more and more African Americans moved from the South to the industrial North, they started to move into predominantly white neighborhoods. In 1918, 4 days starting July 25th, 4 days starting July 25th, for 4 days. Okay, in 1918, for 4 days starting July 25th, there was a race riot in Chester and Philadelphia. When things finally settled down, 3 black and 2 white people had died from their injuries. Wow, 4 days of rioting. So, in May 1919, in Philadelphia, the black migration created very high tensions in the area surrounding 25th and Pine Streets. Making things worse, a local gang had been terrorizing the new black tenants. On May 9th, a large mob of white people clashed with a large black group. The mob then broke open the door at 2535 Pine Street and tried to eject George Graham and his black family who had moved there a week earlier. A number of people were later arrested. This was a common occurrence at the beginning of the 20th century in the US. Black people would start building up a community, moving into an area, getting jobs, opening businesses, and then white supremacists would break into their homes, burn down their homes, mob into their communities, and start randomly shooting at and killing people, beating people up. Or when somebody crossed the color line, meaning a black person did something that they were not supposed to do, for example, look a white man in the eyes or go into a business that they were not allowed to be in, or God forbid, whistle at a white woman or something like that, oh, all hell would break loose. All hell would break loose and the whole town would burn down, like in Black Wall Street, like what happened multiple times in New York, in Miami, in Chicago, in Atlanta, in Houston. Many race riots, white supremacist, violent terrorist attacks happened in the early 20th century. And if we look at the numbers, there have been more riots from white supremacists attacking black Americans than there have been of black Americans just running into Lululemon. You feel me? So let's go here. July 1919, the New York Times wrote an article that described 2 riots during the Red Summer, one on July 7th and 31st. Authors Rucker and Upton talk about during a carnival, a group of whites fought a group of blacks. The violence was quickly suppressed with when over 100 police showed up and made arrests, right? And I'm sure they arrest mostly black people because back then the majority of the police were white men. So whose side do you think they're going to be on? Let's keep on building here. So the uprising was one of several incidents of civil unrest that took place during the so-called Red Summer of 1919. The summer consisted of terrorist attacks on black communities and white oppression in over 3 dozen cities and counties. In most cases, white mobs attacked African American neighborhoods. In some cases, black community groups resisted the attacks, especially in Chicago and Washington, D.C. Most deaths occurred in rural areas during events like the Elaine Massacre in Arkansas, where an estimated 100 to 240 black people and 5 white people were killed. My God, I've never even heard of that. We got to build on that. Also occurring in 1919 were the Chicago race riot and Washington, D.C. race riot, which killed 38 and 39 people respectively, with both events having many more non-fatal injuries and extensive property damage reaching millions of dollars. And of course, we're going to talk about the 1964 Philadelphia race riot. But my God, every time I go back in history and look at how our people have been treated in the US or other parts of the world, it's always so sickening. I've never heard of the Elaine Massacre, but that's why we do these live streams. So I can learn, so you can learn, and we can grow together and build so we are mentally prepared to fight against the white supremacists. But let's go here to the 1964 Philadelphia riots, also called the Columbia Avenue riots. This was by Hillary S. Cativa, and the links for all of these web pages that we will be reading are in the description of this video. So let's go. On the night of August 28th, 1964, officers Robert Wells and John Hoff responded to a domestic dispute at the corner of 22nd Street and Columbia Avenue. As the officers attempted to resolve the conflict between Odessa Bradford and her husband Rush, the commotion attracted a crowd, which subsequently attacked the police with bricks and other debris. Rumor and misinformation, especially, pardon guys, I'm tripping up. Rumor and misinformation, specifically that a black pregnant woman had been beaten to death by a white policeman, fed the disorder And what began as a minor police incident erupted into a riot that consumed North Philadelphia for days. In the end, order was largely restored by September 1st, but debates over the meaning of the riots and their civil rights implications have endured. Specifically, the question of whether the riots on Columbia Avenue were a civil rights issue, and if so, a civil rights issue for whom. While looters argued they were laying claim to wealth and power that was otherwise denied, prominent civil rights activists were quick to distance their campaigns from the rioters' actions and associate the riots with black militants. For their part, many of the neighborhood's Jewish business owners saw the riots as a modern day pogrom and charged that anti Semitism, not civil rights, was at issue and that police responded ineffectually to the chaos that ensued. As these divergent viewpoints attest, the legacy of the Columbia Avenue riots is as complex and heated as the riots themselves and raises compelling questions about the riot's significance as a civil rights moment. Once again, there have been many of these all over the US throughout the 20th century, and time again, we see that there is a common denominator in all of them: police interaction with minorities. Whenever the police go in, because we live in a white supremacist society, and the majority of the police officers, unfortunately, are more leaning to those ideas because of their background and that sort of thing, they are going to come in and be hostile with people. Also, we live in a country that is very, very aggressive, very violent. People have weapons, like I said. So the police are on edge all the time. On top of that, many of them are very reactionary, very right wing, very conservative. Some are white supremacists, and this has been proven. There have been proven Nazis and racists and fascists on police forces in the US. So, of course, when they're dealing with minorities, people that they view as lesser than or hostile to them, they are going to be aggressive. And then what ensues? Negative interactions. We need to change the way policing is done, but we also need to change the way the laws in our society work when it comes to weapons and people having access to them, because this puts everybody on edge. I'm telling you, I'm walking the streets of Budapest, Hungary right now, any time of the day, any time of the night, never in fear of my life, never in fear of somebody robbing me with a gun. I don't hear about mass shootings happening here in Budapest, Hungary. Much, much safer society, and there won't be riots like this. Even though there is a group of people here in Hungary that deserve to riot: the Romani, the Gypsy. They are the underclass here, but they don't riot because somewhat they are living in a more peaceful state. They're not getting harassed and killed by the police, but like we are in the US, which is causing the riots that are happening in Philadelphia, right? Even though we do not condone at all people running up in Lululemon or the Apple store taking everything, we have to say that it, these reactions are caused by actions that came before. So let's keep on building. So, conditions in the jungle. As looters overtook Columbia Avenue in August 1964, Philadelphia NAACP President Cecil B. Moore and other civil rights leaders appealed to the crowd to disperse, but were rebuffed. To Moore's pleas for order, one woman memorably responded, "This is the only time in my life I've got a chance to get these things," exemplifying the conventional interpretation that a lack of progress on civil rights and poor living conditions in North Philadelphia fueled the riots. Indeed, life in the area known as the Jungle was markedly poor in August 1964, as thousands occupied a marginal existence amidst the city's worst housing and highest rates of unemployment and crime. Out of an African American population of approximately 530,000, a little less than half lived in North Philadelphia, where youth generally completed only 8 years of schooling, and the average income, $3,352 per year, was about 30% lower than the city average. Furthermore, unemployment ranged between 13 and 20% and was persistently high among young, semi skilled, and unskilled workers. In addition, resentments and distrust between black residents and police fed discontent in North Philadelphia and left many residents searching for an outlet for their frustrations. Civil rights campaigns purported to alleviate such harsh circumstances, yet racial progress in North Philadelphia proved slow and insufficient. While demonstrations and achievements like the Civil Rights Act of 1964 dominated the news, African Americans in the North's urban ghettos ultimately felt divorced from events that seemed to have little practical effect on their lives. Accordingly, in the assessment of the Commission on Human Rights, many blacks concluded that civil rights agitation could only mean rioting, and took their grievances to the streets in Philadelphia, Harlem, and other cities throughout the summer of 1964. Shout out to Craig Mack. He's in the chat. What up, Simon? What happened to long distance running? Hey, I'm going to get back to it, but we're building heavy right now, man. I'm going to get back to the long distance running, but let's talk here about the riots in Philadelphia. So, back in 1964, there was a large riot that happened, and the boule class, the bourgeoisie Negroes at the NAACP, told the class, hey, why don't y'all break it up? Come on, guys, we've made civil rights progress. Come on, we have freedom now. We're no longer in segregation. But people forget that liberation for black people and freedom from white supremacy also comes with financial freedom as well, financial independence, and not economic destitution. And while we will remain economically destitute, we can never be free at the same time. So, what we're seeing in Philadelphia, when the kids, like I said before, are running up into the Apple store trying to take everything, this is a part of economic destitution. I'm pretty sure these kids are coming from houses that are under the poverty line, where kids are not getting the best education at school, where their parents are working 2 or 3 jobs just to maintain. Economic deprivation is one of the main factors for crime in any society, for any group of people, whether they be black or white. So, what we're seeing in the riots here in this situation and in the riots that happened back in the 1960s, like this woman said, this is the only time in my life I've got a chance to get these things. I'm pretty sure that's what these kids are saying too. This is the only time in my life I'll be able to walk out of the Nike store with boxes and boxes of dunks. Let's keep it a buck, man. So we're living in a society that's economically destitute. For a certain group of people, we live under extreme capitalism where people have to work 3, 4 jobs, 50 hours a week just to get by. Barely very few Americans have more than 2 pennies to rub together. Hell, I'm one of them. I'm part of the working poor. I've said multiple times, I make only about $1,500 a month on average. Now, living in Central Eastern Europe, however you want to call it, in Budapest, Hungary, hey, that's great. That's actually pretty good here. That's like middle class, honestly. But in America, boy, I would probably be out there with them too, because that would be the only time in my life I could afford something like that. But let's keep it real. Let's keep it real. We don't support looting. We don't support crime and anything like that. But we have to understand that it comes from a specific place. If there is no justice, there is no peace. What happened to Eddie Irizarry? What happened to Eddie Irizarry by the police officer, Officer Dial, who shot him? That should not have happened. That and letting him off the hook for murder charges or manslaughter charges or any charges is not justice. And as long as there is no justice, there will be no peace in a society. Let's continue building on the riots that happened in Philadelphia in the 1960s. Interesting Interestingly, despite the harsh realities of African American life in North Philadelphia, local civil rights leaders were quick to distance themselves from the rioters' actions and deny that any civil rights issues were involved. Among others, Reverend Leon H. Sullivan characterized the riots as civil destruction rather than civil rights in a Philadelphia Inquirer article on August 30th, 1964, and described the looting and violence as the work of a few hoodlums who saw an opportunity to vandalize. The notion that rioting was not legitimate activism was prevalent, as were calls for law and order. Alternately, addressing the crowd, Stanley Branch, George Woods, Raymond Pace Alexander, and other civil rights notables all asserted that African Americans could not solve their problems in the streets, and Commission on Human Rights Relations Chairwoman Sadie T.M. Alexander even called the mayor Tate to deputize 5,000 responsible Negro leaders to aid the police. All right, that's a bit embarrassing. That's a bit embarrassing to see black people ready to work with the uh, you know, levers of power, those who are meant to oppress us, to be deputized as police. Now, there are some people that say, black people from a community can better police that community than people that come from outside, people who live in the suburbs but only travel to the city to work as cops. I can understand that point right there, but deputizing people also arms them, also gives them the right to shoot at people for no reason or what they believe to be a legitimate reason, right? And I don't think we need to add on to the violence in our society and arrest looters. Let's get to the comments. I see Barry. You are wrong. This is bad behavior, pure and simple. Stop complaining about the past and justifying what happened. Your attitude is part of the reason blacks haven't moved forward. I love a good white supremacist comment in my section. So Barry is an idiot. Barry is one of the stupid people in my comment section who doesn't listen to everything I say before he leaves his dumbass comment. I've said multiple times, looting is not okay, criminality is not okay, and that sort of thing. And so, Barry, with your dumbass who loves to jump on this black YouTube channel, stop complaining about the past. How about this, Barry? We'll make an agreement. Your community, presumably because you're a white supremacist, Barry. Your community, stop practicing white supremacy. Your community, stop practicing anti black racism. Your community, stop making our community economically deprived. Your community, stop bombing the third world. Your community, stop putting embargoes on Cuba. Your community, stop gentrifying our communities. How about you do that and I will stop complaining about racism. And even if you are Blackberry, you are a cracker. You're a black ass cracker. You crack ass cracker. You black ass cracker cracker. Barry, you are a bitch ass nigga if you are black. If you are black, you're a bitch ass nigga and you're also a crack ass cracker. We are not complaining about the past, Barry, on this black ass YouTube channel. What we are doing, Barry, is educating our people about the past, you dumbass. That's what we do. We actually read on this channel, you bitch ass, cracker nigga. I hate you, Uncle Tom ass niggas. Don't you ever come on this channel, Barry, because you will never, ever speak louder than me. What you're only doing, Barry, is making me richer. What you're only doing, Barry, is getting your ass roasted for being an Uncle Tom ass coon, you bitch ass nigga. So go somewhere with your butter biscuits and hang out with the white women, the fat white bitches that you're trying to fuck, talking that Republican nonsense, talking this conservative nonsense. We are over here reading about the past, you dumbass. And I've said multiple times, you bitch ass nigga Barry, that criminality is not okay. But what is not okay is racist terrorism against black people. You bitch ass nigga, and you will get your ass. You know what? How about this, Barry? I am talking, Barry. We were reading history, you dumbass nigga. I don't know why you're here, but how about this, Barry? You take your crack ass somewhere else and find a nice book by Bill O'Reilly to pick up. How about you take your, your conservative talking points to go give Larry Elder a blowjob? How about you go get the Herman Cain Award? You know what I mean? I'm not gonna block his ass, Barry. You can come over here and get this work. You can come over here and get this work, Barry. Because what you will do, Barry, is sit here for this education. It doesn't matter if you're conservative or liberal, Barry. What you are is a crack ass cracker. We are not complaining about the past. We are literally reading history. We are doing what your stupid ass doesn't do, Barry. You're the type of nigga that white people talk about. You are a nigger. You don't read, Barry. You are a nigger. You are what the white supremacists call us. You are a dumbass who doesn't read. What we do on every live stream is read about our history and then educate people about it. How about you actually pay attention and read and do something that you haven't done, hoe ass nigga? Let's continue building. It's so funny whenever I get the chance to call out a crack ass cracker and also call him the hard R. That's fun. So, no, Barry, we're not having a conversation. This is education, Barry. This is education. We are reading. So, how about you do this? Don't come in here with white supremacist talking points unless you heard what I said before. Bitch ass nigga, you crack ass cracker. And I hope your mama falls off a cliff, Barry, because she raised a dumbass who dropped you out of the crib. So let's continue building here. Anyway, the notion that rioting was not legitimate activism was prevalent, as were calls for law and order, alternately addressing the crowd. Stanley Branch, Georgia Woods, Raymond Pace, Alexander, and all other civil rights notables all asserted that African Americans could not solve their problems in the streets, and Commission on Human Relations Chairwoman Sadie T.M. even called on Mayor Tate to deputize 5,000 responsible Negro leaders to aid the police. In the wake of the riots, the city's black establishment invoked a true divide between events on Columbia Avenue and the civil rights movement, a schism that rumors about the role of black militants only reinforced. In the immediate aftermath, reports that black radicals had infiltrated the neighborhood and stirred up trouble quickly spread, and many called on the FBI and the U.S. Justice Department to investigate whether the riots in Philadelphia and other cities had been planned. In Philadelphia, 3 individuals with alleged ties to the black Muslims were arrested and charged with inciting riots, though the nature of their roles and premeditation involved remains uncertain. Nonetheless, the eagerness with which Philadelphia's civil rights leaders blamed black militants for the riots and noteworthy and highlights, among other things, the growing split between traditionally minded activists and those who emphasized aggression and revolution. Notably, these tensions continued to play out in the years to come as civil rights leaders leaders increasingly debated the tactics and objectives of their movement and battled for the hearts and minds of neighborhoods like North Philadelphia. Very interesting stuff. There's always this blame game that goes on whenever there is riots that happen, or whenever people start rising up, or when people do things like looting, like we're seeing in Philadelphia and that sort of thing. And one thing we can't do is blame the black radicals or the black Muslims or the people who are out there saying that they are going to fight for our liberation, or they're dedicated to the armed struggle for our liberation constructively and that sort of thing. So I think the scapegoats of this incident that happened in the 1960s might have been those movements, like the Panthers and like the black Muslims and that sort of thing. But yeah, we should always remember that the root causes for all of the injustice that happens in America is the white supremacy that takes place, and also the extreme capitalism that we live under that puts economic pressure on people not to be able to move upward. Let's continue building. So, neighborhood dynamics, regardless of whether or not the riots were premeditated, contemporaries and historians alike agree that certain neighborhood dynamics informed the events that took place on Columbia Avenue in August 1964. For one, suspicions that the riots were actually a modern day pogrom driven by anti Semitism tap into the complex issue of Jewish African American relations within both North Philadelphia and the civil rights movement more generally. Even as blacks and Jews forged an alliance around civil rights, charges of black anti Semitism and exploitation by Jewish business owners and landlords strained their alliance and bred distrust among the two minority groups. During the riots, the looting of Jewish owned businesses reinforced such fears, and as the Jewish Community Relations Council, JCRC, concluded in the immediate aftermath, posed a serious setback to the civil rights movement and intergroup cooperation. I hate when people say that, whenever the looting happens or this sort of thing, you're setting back the movement. No, this is just an incident that happens towards the movement, towards justice. Once again, criminality is not okay. Looting is not okay. Burning businesses down is not okay. But that doesn't stop the forward march of justice. And we don't care what conservatives say. We don't care what the right wing say. This does not represent us. This does not represent the movement to actually hold police accountable when they kill American citizens, regardless of whether they be black or whites. Because from my recollection, Eddie Azari was a Puerto Rican man, right? So once again, we are holding police accountable to make America better for all citizens, not just for black people or any minority group in particular. We're holding this country accountable. And while some people lash out because the march towards justice is hard, long, and arduous, and sometimes it's set with tragedies like what happened with Eddie Azari, we continue to march forward, and we won't let this stuff hold us back. So let's get into the comments. Greg Mack says, block his ass. Barry says, I'm not a conservative or liberal. Why are you getting so mad? Let's have a conversation instead. Mom is dead. Yep, I'm glad she is dead. I'm glad your mom is dead, Barry. I am 62 years old. Keep going. I'm listening. Yeah, I'm glad she's dead because she taught you to think that black people reading our history is wrong. And I don't care if you ever come back to this channel, Barry. I'm glad she died. I'll say it again. Yeah. Greg Mack says, Buck Dancing Barry, hit the like button. He said, listen to his entire dialogue, so I am listening. Yeah, I don't care what anybody says right now. I don't care what anybody says right now. I'm a harsh motherfucker because I stand up for our people and I'm about reading history. And I hate people coming in with talking points and preconceived notions. You're 62 years old, Barry. I am literally 33 years old. You're more than double my age. And you don't even know how to sit down and listen. Showing your mama didn't teach you well and she deserves to be 6 feet under. Yeah, I said it. I'm going in. So, notably, the lack of police intervention to stop the looting complicated matters further as business owners accuse police of employing minimal force against rioters at the expense of widespread property damage. Following Police Commissioner Howard Leary's riot control plan, police exercised restraint and focused on containment and avoiding casualties, which augmented business owners' perceptions that they were the riot's true victims. In his proclamation on August 30th, Mayor Tate acknowledged these feelings and pledged full support for North Philadelphia's merchants, though by this time many business owners judged Tate's response insufficient. In the coming years, these feelings would grow as dissatisfaction with the city's riot response gradually morphed into a more conservative discourse on civil rights and an emphasis on law and order both locally and nationally that helped fuel the rise of President Nixon, future Philadelphia Mayor Frank Rizzo, and others. Largely in response to lingering concerns within the Jewish community, the American Jewish Committee commissioned Lenora Burson to write an in-depth study on the riots, which was subsequently published in 1966. For her part, Burson argued that anti-white sentiment drove the looting and downplayed charges of anti-Semitism, concluding that Jewish merchants were attacked not as Jews, but as representatives of Columbia Avenue's white establishment. On the whole, Burson's analysis echoed the stance of establishment organizations like the Jewish Community Relations Council, who pledged support for effective businesses but defended the police's actions and warned against letting the riot. Jewish African American relations. Ultimately, the extent to which efforts to reaffirm the alliance between blacks and Jews influenced Burson's findings is impossible to determine, though it is clear that the JCRC and others were actively engaged in doing so in the riot's aftermath. On September 14th, hey, my birthday, the JCRC sponsored a unity rally for North Philadelphia residents and businessmen at the Emmanuel Institution Baptist Church and subsequently proposed various initiatives to improve living conditions and community relations. However, a survey of Columbia Avenue's Jewish merchants, jointly conducted by the JCRC and Temple University's Center of Community Studies in the late 1960s, reveals the limited success of these endeavors, as many respondents bemoaned the deterioration of the neighborhood and expressed a desire to sell or move their businesses amidst recurrences of violence, burglary, and vandalism. While the assistance of the JCRC, many ultimately did so to the extent that the number of black-owned businesses on Columbia Ridge and Susquehanna Avenue outnumbered Jewish-owned ones by 1970, an upward trend that continued in the years to come. Yada, 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 yada. I don't know why they started talking about that. I mean, this was a riot that was about the civil rights movement. I don't know how they were tied Jewish Americans into it, etc. I can understand if their businesses were destroyed and that sort of thing. But I think we put too much emphasis on capitalism, on protecting capital, on protecting private property, like protecting these businesses and that sort of thing, right? Because all of this can be replaced. A lot of these places have, insurance and that sort of thing. Okay. So Barry said, I am still not upset by what you said, and I'm still listening. Man, I got some cucks on my channel. I got some people that just would love to hear a black man talk down to them. See, that's the thing about white supremacist thinking. Whether Barry is black or white supremacists love when black people attack them and talk down to them. That's the reason why one of the biggest genres of, porn right now is black men sleeping with white men's wives right in front of them. It's a real thing. Barry is a cuck. Barry is a cuck. Layberry, I was hoping that you would cover this. I did this actually for you, Layberry. I'm going to keep it real with you because you told me so much about Philadelphia. It actually broke my heart to see this happening in Philadelphia yesterday. It really broke my heart to see that, right? We have a rat in the comments, somebody called pest control. That's funny. But no, but to be real, like, it's not okay what's happening in Philadelphia. Layberry, I would love to hear what you have to say because you're actually in Philly right now. Like, you're from there. What do you think about all this? Talk about it. Let us know in the chat. But my opinion is that this is all wrong. Like, it's not okay for people to be tearing up businesses. And a lot of these young people might be ruining their futures, like going into these stores and, stealing these things, getting arrested, getting charges. They could be the future lawyers, doctors, you know what I mean? But instead, they're out there doing dumb stuff, right? And the police shouldn't be beating up people like this kid. This is a grown man that punched a kid in the face. That's not cool. But once again, we have to remember that it's not okay for the police to shoot citizens, to kill people who are unarmed. It's not okay for race riots to happen in Philadelphia. It's not okay for America to have such segregated cities in 2023. It's not okay for black people to be the lowest on the economic ladder in America. That's not okay. And that's why we have these riots. We need to acknowledge both, that the society that we're living in is sick and that rioting and looting is sick. You get what I'm saying? So Layberry says, thanks, bro. This happened 15 minutes from my place. That's crazy. I hope you and your family are okay. I wish you the best. Stay safe out there. I agree. Trust me, Black Philadelphia is not happy about the looting. Absolutely. See, that's the thing. A lot of the white supremacists love to say, oh, looting is happening. Black people must support it. Y'all black people are just so violent, or y'all love to see looting and y'all don't talk about criminality. Listen, it's so dumb. It's so dumb. I can say looting is wrong. Just like the same way me as a Muslim, I call ISIS bad. Any terrorist activities done against other groups of people because of their religion is bad. Terrorism is bad. Looting is bad. Those are my two identities. I'm a black Muslim. I can call terrorism bad. I can call looting bad, but I can still point the finger at the white supremacists as the reason why those two things exist. You get what I'm saying here? But yeah. Yeah, we're tired of police brutality, absolutely. But I think it also goes deeper than police brutality. It goes to the economic deprivation, to a lot of the things that are happening in our country, right? We have to keep it real. Black people, really don't have a lot of funds and that sort of thing. And that's the reason why a lot of these kids, man, are running up into the Lululemon, into the Apple store, trying to get their hands on it. I know y'all might hate that I'm replaying the same footage, but I think this is the only footage that's appropriate for YouTube where I won't get demonetized. Though I think my comment, I think this video will be demonetized by what I said to Barry earlier. But anyway, before we end up this live stream, because I'm actually just going to make this very short, but if anybody has more comments about Philadelphia or about what they know about the situation, let us know. But yeah, let's go here. So, what Martin Luther King Jr. really thought about riots. And I think this is what we always have to keep in mind. Our ancestors, Martin, Malcolm, Frederick Douglass, all of them who came before us went through so much more than we're going through. And they thought very deeply about what our people are going through and the right ways to respond to that. And I think this is a good article to end on this live stream to talk about, the riots that are happening in Philly and what can be done and how can we move forward as a people to make sure that this doesn't happen again, but also so that we produce justice. You get what I'm saying? All right. Yeah, no, Layberry, you're more than welcome to jump on the live. Layberry says I need to jump on the live one day. Everybody's more than welcome. You don't have to show your face. You don't have to, be on screen like me. You can just call in. I really want to do a call-in show, like how Star does it, like how a few other people do it, like maybe a Twitter space or something like that. I want to do a call-in where I talk to y'all, build with y'all, and that sort of thing. So let's go here. What Martin Luther King Jr. really thought about riots. This was written by Meena Krishnamurthy. So Joe Biden is trying to use Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy to make the case for a law and order crackdown on protests. But King drew a distinction between violence against people and violence against property, and he viewed riots as the product of an unjust social order. Yes, Martin Luther King Jr. in 1964, Nord Harlan's Archief. So in a new campaign ad, Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden says that rioting is not protesting, looting is not protesting, and those who do it should be prosecuted. Last week, in a major campaign address in Pittsburgh, Biden hammered on the same point, declaring that looting is wrong in every way. It makes things worse across the board, not better. No, it's not what Dr. King or Joe Louis taught, and it must end. Martin Luther King Jr. III offered a different view in a tweet earlier this year. As my father explained during his lifetime, a riot is the language of the unheard. A number of people felt they knew King's father well enough to respond, tweeting that King's pere would never condone the riots. Violence is not what he stood for. After all, one tweeter noted, he never once rioted. I hate when white people now today try to use Martin Luther King's name to speak up for their talking points. When if Martin Luther King were alive today, hell, when Martin Luther King was alive, everything that he stands for, they're vehemently against. Martin Luther King said that black people need reparations. I agree with that. The right wing and the conservatives and the white supremacists in America don't agree with that. Martin Luther King said America should stop its military interventions across the world. The right wing doesn't agree with that. The conservatives and white supremacists don't agree with that. They think that America should be able to bomb any country in the world at any point in time. Martin Luther King thought America should be equal and that all groups of people should be protected under the law. The white supremacists don't agree with that. The conservatives don't agree with that sort of thing, etc. So yeah, let's just keep on building, man. We have to remember that Martin Luther King was one of our greatest thinkers, but he's also one of our most misunderstood thinkers. And one thing I want to do is actually read a few of his books, because I haven't had a chance to read, because he was actually a published author. I need to actually read some of his actual material, his actual words, and that sort of thing. Let's get into the comments. So Barry, Malcolm X talked about black self-help and moving forward without white help. Okay, Barry, you know what else? You know what your mama talked about? Your mama talked about black dick. That's what your mama talked about, Barry. Your mama in the grave, man. Yeah, we need a hate crime bill. Definitely, we need a hate crime bill, Greg Mack. We need a bill that specifically targets Black Americans in protecting us from not only white supremacist violence from other citizens, but from the police as well. That's why we need to probably get that George Floyd Justice and Policing Act passed through Congress. But unfortunately, the filibuster in the Senate prevents that from happening. We need to get 60 votes in the Senate to get the to get the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act passed. That will hold police accountable. Right now, a lot of police can't be held accountable because of what is it called, preferred immunity or something like that. Basically, the police are protected from being sued civilly for what they do on the job, right? And if we were able to sue police for the misconduct that they do on the job, we would be able to hold more people accountable. But unfortunately, the right wing and the conservatives are obsessed with, fighting Black progress in any way. So let's go here to the comments. So Layberry says Barry is a white guy. He has to be. There's a lot of white supremacists online who pretend to be Black. They come into my comments all the time with Black icons and avatars and that sort of thing. They pretend to be us, but honestly they're us, right? And even if he is Black, he is saying white supremacist talking points. Black people need to do self-help. All right, Barry, how about this? We did self-help when we built up Black Wall Street, when we built up our communities in Chicago, in New York, in Atlanta, in Miami. What did the white supremacists do, Barry? What did the white supremacists do every single time Black people built up a viable, sustainable community by ourselves? When we pulled ourselves up by our bootstraps, what did y'all do? What did y'all do to the Freedmen's Bank, Barry? What did the white supremacists do when we started our own bank and people that were newly emancipated put all their money into this bank that was protected by the federal government? What did the white supremacists do, Barry? They literally stole the money, Barry. They literally burned down Black Wall Street, Barry. They literally burned down so many of our other communities, Barry. We've always had a culture of self-help, Barry. And yes, whoever you are, Barry, whatever you stand for, Malcolm X would not agree with you. Malcolm X is on our side, not on y'all side. And listen, guys, I want to ask Layberry and Craig Mack, I want to ask you guys a question. A lot of the times I don't let the white supremacists on my channel because some of their comments are like very disgusting. Like they're, attacking me, they're attacking my wife, they're threatening violence against us. But I'm at this point now where my channel is going up and I just don't care anymore. Should I just let them into the comments? Should I not block any of the racists that continually leave hateful messages, calling us monkeys, putting bananas in there, calling me all sorts of slurs and that sort of thing? In because honestly, I want to make sure I want to keep this academic. I don't want to I don't want to turn this into World Star Hip Hop or Vlad TV. But the comment section is really crazy, and I don't know where people like Barry come from with these talking points, Barry. Barry, we've always been about self-help. And yes, your mama is a bitch, Barry. Your dead mama is a bitch. I'll say it again. Whoever taught you to think like that is a hoe. Is a hoe, man. She was a hoe. And if she was a Black woman, she was a bed wench. She was a bed wench, Barry. I got to keep it real. You talking real crazy in here. You're talking real crazy. We read our history to learn, Barry. We don't read to sit here and complain about white people all day. Layberry is Black excellence. Greg Mack is Black excellence. I'm Black excellence. All of us are Black excellence. All of us as Black men have had to deal with BS all of our lives, from white supremacists, from people on the job, from people in the streets. We've all dealt with that, and we are still here surviving, talking, living, sharing our experiences, and growing. Barry, whoever you are, we don't just complain about white people. We learn and educate ourselves and build. Do you get what I'm saying here? We've always been about self-help. We've always been about growth and that sort of thing. We don't condone criminality, Barry. You can go somewhere else with that talking point, Barry. So you can filter out all the name calling, but I'll call you more name calling in between educating you, Barry. I'll call you a bitch and at the same time educate you about the history of our people in America. We've always been everything that you said we should do. We've been self-reliant. We've been hardworking. We've been industrious. We've been civil people. We've had good family structures. We've had all of that. What's the next thing you're going to say, Barry? That we need to have more fathers in the home? My father was in my house. I knew my dad all my life. All the Black men in my family have been in their kids' lives. We don't come from a culture of baby mamas and absentee fathers and that sort of thing. That's a myth that your community created about us. That's a myth. Black men are always in our children's lives, Barry. I know you're going to go there. We know all of your stupid talking points, Barry. because we live in this society where that is prevalent. But unfortunately, Barry, if you're black or if you're white, you've bought into the BS. You've bought into the BS, Barry. So, yeah, yeah, let's continue building. Let's continue building. I don't have time to read all the comments, but I'm gonna read some right now. So, Barry's all right. Barry says, "Are you 5 years old? Why you keep talking about your mama? Because your mama was a hoe. She was a hoe, Barry. That's why I'm gonna keep talking about that little stank, flat titty, pancake broad." All right. So, Layberry, what type of man hides behind a YouTube account and on top of that pretend to be another race? Black people must intimidate you. Facts, facts, man. Barry, just come out. It's okay to be white. We don't hate white people on this channel, Barry. Don't be afraid, man. I don't know. Barry just came in here. He wanted to be a center of attention. Barry doesn't have any black friends, so he wants to come into the group, have a black man, a handsome black man, talk to him from across the world. That's all he wants. Let's continue building. So Barry, now you have a now you are having a conversation instead of throwing out name calling. That's all I was asking for, Barry. I don't. At 62 years old, Barry. At 62 years old, a 33-year-old man like me shouldn't be educating you this much about the truth about our people, whether you be black. So if you're 62, Barry, you're literally about my dad's age, right? You're literally maybe a bit older than my dad. You and him are about the same age. My dad dealt with racism in Alabama. Barry, if you're a black man from America, I don't know how you can come in here talking this type of talk, man. Anyway, Greg Mack, when the police department is getting sued, they should take it from the corrupt cops or cops' pension. Facts, yes. If the police department gets sued, and by the way, the taxpayers, whenever the police are sued by somebody's mama whose son got killed by the police wrongly, and then the police department has to pay that mama, $50 million or something like that, we, the taxpayers, deal with that. But that should come out of the police pension account. That should come out of their salaries or something like that. We need to hit them where it hurts in the pockets. So Layberry, the hate that we love to be black, they hate that we love to be black. We tried to keep us down, but you couldn't break us, and you people hate that. Let them hate, bro, because we love our haters. You know what they say. If they're hating, you must be doing something right. Amen. Amen, man. I mean, everything is going up, whether I, let them on the channel or not. Greg Mack says, yeah, let them hate and roast them while they start writing crazy. I'm filtering out all your name calling and just listening to some of your conversation. You sound like an educated person in between all of your name calling. I am very educated, Barry. I'm very educated. I'm handsome. I'm smart. I'm clever. I'm charismatic. I'm all of those things, Barry. I'm black excellence personified, and I use my voice to speak out against white supremacy. We are not sitting here hating on the white man. We're not sitting here saying, oh, woe is me. We're actually building and learning and educating ourselves about our ancestors and the fight moving forward for us, because y'all want us to stop talking about racism, but y'all don't stop being racist. And yes, Barry, I'm putting y'all in there because you're over there in the camp with massa in them. So, Greg Mack, or give wenches and we can shoot down the BS. Facts. I am black, but that's okay. Call me what you want because I am thinking different. Listen, man, it's okay to be a black conservative, a black Republican, but it's never okay to be a coon. I repeat, it's okay to be a black conservative. It's okay to be a black Republican, but it's never okay to be an Uncle Tom, a coon, a Sambo. None of that. None of that. Your blackness comes first in this world. Not because I said so, but because the white supremacist said so. The white supremacists will give you your wake up call, Barry. You can vote Republican. You can support Trump, Vivek Ramaswamy, DeSantis, whatever. Just when they ask you, hey, what do you think about Ron DeSantis saying that slavery was good for black people? Don't sit there, Barry, and say, oh, yeah, maybe he's right. When you can vote for, I don't know, one of the Republicans that are running for president right now. But when they ask you, hey, what do you think about holding police accountable for killing civilians? Don't say, well, the police are actually on our side and, we need to bolster law enforcement and give them more funding and that sort of thing. Don't be a coon. I don't have any problems with any black Republicans or conservatives. I only hate coons. Those are the only people that have a problem. All right. So, yeah, let's continue building here. So, What are we talking about here? We're talking about Martin Luther King talking about riots. So, what did King really think about riots? Is Biden on solid ground in invoking the great civil rights leader to have his sister soldier moment? The short answer, absolutely not. While King never viewed rioting as the most effective form of political protest, disciplined mass resistance was clearly superior in his eyes. He also never denounced riots as immoral or engaged in the kind of law and order rhetoric Biden is now deploying. Let's start with the quote that King's son tweeted out: "A riot is the language of the unheard." King made the comment in a 1966 interview with Mike Wallace. He continued, "And what is that America has failed to hear? It has failed to hear the economic plight of the Negro poor has worsened over the last few years." Absolutely true. And that rings true today. Martin Luther King's words still ring true today. The economic plight of Black people in America has worsened. As we look around in America, as we look around, all those jobs in the past where you could have a high school diploma and be able to put your kids through college, buy a house, have two cars, and go on vacation with your wife, that's done. All that is done. All we have are service economy jobs. All the jobs have gone to China. Some people want to blame the immigrants, but they never want to look at the capitalists above them, the business owners above them, who sent all the jobs, all the manufacturing jobs to Mexico, to China, to Japan, to Korea, and that sort of thing. They always want to blame the immigrants, but never the rich people on top who did that to our communities. And we have to remember, whenever America has a cold, Black people get the flu, right? If America has one broken arm, Black Americans have two. So as the rest of the country continues to fall behind, as wages don't keep up with inflation, as the country continues to become more and more expensive, like it is in every part of the world is becoming more and more expensive. Black people are going to suffer worse because, unfortunately, because of the years of oppression that we've had to go through, we are at a lower economic advantage. And so when these kids are breaking into the Apple store, when they're doing all this, of course, this is not right, but we have to see systemically, where does it come from? Systemically, it's a group of people who have been kept out of economic opportunities for so long. Let's continue building. So, the previous year, in a statement to the press about the Watts Rebellion, King argued that people place too much emphasis on racial significance in their assessments of riots. In his view, riots were the rumblings of discontent from the have nots within the midst of an affluent society. They were expressions of the despair that afflicts people when they see no other way out of their economic dilemma, expressions of doubt about the willingness of the white community and the Black middle class to change the situation. Before anyone rioted in Watts, King noted the state of California had nixed a fair housing bill. The have-nots had been deserted in the struggle for justice and felt they must resort to the methods that gained the most attention. I would like to know about housing in Philadelphia. I'd like to know if the rent there, what's the rent like in Philadelphia? Like for a one bed, one bath, like what are we talking? I'm imagining it's like $1,500 a month or something like that. You know what I mean? And or maybe 2,000. I mean, it's a major metro in the U.S. And in a lot of places in the U.S., the rent keeps going up because they're not building new housing. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people in Philly, like in many other parts of the country, are feeling that stress. So let's continue building here. So for King, it was crucial to distinguish between violence against property and violence against people. In a 1967 speech entitled "Nonviolence and Social Change," he noted that the riots of that year had directed their ire at property rather than people, and that the vast majority of rioters did not attack anyone. Where injuries did occur, they were inflicted by the military and the police against rioters. In another speech that year at the American Psychological Association's annual convention, King distinguished between insurrections, riots, and looting. Though they may engage in violent acts, unlike insurrectionists, rioters were not seeking to seize territory or institutions. Looting, one type of rioting, was a form of social protest that served many functions. It was mainly intended to shock the American community. Looting enabled the deprived to take hold of consumer goods with the ease of those with money in their purses. And knowing that this society cherishes property above people, he is shocking it by abusing property rights. That's very, very deep. I want people to think about that. Martin Luther King is saying something very, very, very deep here. He is saying that America cares more about property than they do about people. Because think about it. Think about it. America, by and large, was not outraged when Trayvon Martin was killed, when Sean Bell was killed, when Ahmaud Arbery was killed. America, by and large, is not shocked when Black bodies are shot down on TV screens all across the country. But America is shocked when they see people doing this, running up into the Nike store, taking everything. That's what shocks people because we live in a country that values property, private property, capitalism, the sale and exchange of goods more than we value people's lives. There are people that will watch this video and see this grown man punch this kid in the face, and they will say, you know what, he deserved it because he robbed property. Think about that. Martin Luther King was a very, very deep brother. Very deep brother. And that's why I cherish our ancestors. And that's why, honestly, I can never add on to what we're doing here because when I read the words of our ancestors, I get so much inspiration and I'm just shook like by how much they thought deeply about this. By looting the have-nots are shocking the American psyche by taking away property because property rights are more valuable to the American mind than the actual lives of black people. Very, very deep, very powerful. King noted that in Detroit, whites and Negroes looted in unity. Looting was a kind of physical critique of capitalism. In attacking property together, they were attacking the white capitalist power structure that was oppressing them. While those who had held property in persons sacrosanct may have winced at King's distinction, he explained that his views were not so rigid. A life is sacred. Property is intended to serve life. And no matter how much we surround it with rights and respect, it has no personal being. It is it is part of the earth man walks on. It is not man. With this, King concluded that rioting, which targets property and not people, maintains a core commitment to the moral principle of nonviolence towards persons. King worried that defenders of the status quo would fail to acknowledge the moral restraints of the rioters and resist their demands on the grounds that rioting must not be rewarded. Meanwhile, the underlying structural issues that had sparked the riots in the first place would continue to fester. Yeah, very, very deep. Very, very deep what Martin Luther King is saying. Listen, when we watch the videos of these kids breaking into the Apple store, we all know it is wrong. It is absolutely wrong. But we have to realize that there is some restraint. And I believe the people here are somewhat cognizant. They are taking advantage of a situation that is not right. When we hear about police shooting people, unarmed people, or whatever the case may be, when we hear about that, there is no justice, therefore there is no peace. But there is also some restraint. When we look at the videos of the people looting, they are not running out of the store and then fighting with the police. There's nobody out there shooting at the police. There's nobody out there trying to, cause harm to other people. They're literally just taking because of the economic deprivation, right? Because this is the one time they get to release and lash out at a system that has held us back for so long and held them in restraint for so long. That's very, very deep. Martin Luther King is making a very nascent point right here that there is restraint from the looters. Very deep. See, this is the real Martin Luther King. This is not the Martin Luther King that the white folks love to talk about, judge people by the content of their character and that sort of thing. This is the I'm coming for my check Martin Luther King, the real Martin Luther King, the revolutionary Martin Luther King that the white supremacists don't like to talk about. But that's what we do on this channel. We honor our ancestors and we read the text. We don't just take sound bites. Let's continue reading. So, uh, King worried the defenders of the status quo will fail to acknowledge the moral restraint of the rioters and resist their demands on the grounds that rioting must not be rewarded. Meanwhile, the underlying structural issues that had sparked the riots in the first place would continue to fester. What was needed, King argued, was a revolution against that injustice, not against the lives of the people who are their fellow citizens, but against the structures through which the society is refusing to take means which have been called for and which are at hand to lift the load of poverty. Biden is right that we should look to Martin Luther King in this moment of rebellion and upheaval and injustice. More than 40 million Americans have lost their jobs. Millions are facing eviction. Police violence is out of control. But if Biden actually examined King's politics, not the conservative, boulderized version, but the genuine radical King, he might not like what he finds. And listen, Biden is a white supremacist. I'm not going to sit here and cape for Joe Biden. Yes, he is a latent white supremacist. He's not as bad as Trump, in my opinion. But yes, they are both bad. But listen, we have to heed the words of our ancestors and listen to and really analyze and critique what is happening around us in society. Nobody likes to see young people throw out their lives and crash out, especially over some Puerto Rican kid who probably came from a family that was hella anti-black. I gotta say that too, by the way. Nobody likes to see the kids outside doing this, ranting, looting, raving. Nobody likes to see that. But we have to be more mad about the police getting away with murder than we are about kids stealing apples and iPhones that are already insured. All these companies should have insurance. I'm sure the Apple store has insurance. I'm sure Lululemon has insurance. I'm sure the Nike store has insurance. They will be fine. Nobody is going to die because somebody stole some Nike Dunks or Jordan 4s or whatever that were made by children who were working as slaves in Cambodia. Nobody's going to die. All right, we're going to be fine. The world will rise. The sun will rise tomorrow. The world will continue spinning. Everything will be fine if people, take TVs and that sort of thing. Yes, it is wrong that people ran up in that Haitian woman's business and that sort of thing. Listen, I'm not trying to mitigate the riots and that sort of thing. But we have to remember that it all stems from a society that is very, very, very distorted. We live in a distorted world where people are not upset about police getting away with murder, about whole communities in America being poor and is trapped in generational poverty, young people not feeling like they have outlets in a society that gets more and more and more and more expensive every year. Every day, people are finding it harder to put food on the table. We live in a society where people are not angry about that as they should be. People are angry, unfortunately, about kids stealing iPhones. Let's keep it a buck. All right, so that's all I really have to say about this Philadelphia riots. For anybody who watched this and left comments, I want to appreciate the back and forth banter. I found this very, very entertaining and engaging. I get a bit hot sometimes, but I just want to say I do this for my people. I do this for the culture. And yeah, shout out to y'all. See y'all next time when I build tomorrow on the live stream. All right. Peace.